The great chamber of the Galactic Assembly stretched for miles in every direction. Lights from 1,000 different worlds glowed softly above the circular platforms where representatives from 47 species gathered to decide the fate of billions. The Dorvani had built this place 12,000 years ago, and in all that time, no species had ever walked away from it until today. Ambassador Linda Morrison stood at the human delegation's platform, her hands folded calmly in front of her. She was 53 years old. With silver streaks running through her dark hair and eyes that had seen too many of these meetings. Beside her, Kevin Marshall checked his tablet one last time, confirming that the evacuation orders had been sent to every human colony in assembly space. The Velthary representative was speaking. Its crystalline body caught the chamber lights and scattered them into rainbows as it moved. The species was ancient, proud, and had voted against humanity in every major decision for the past 100 years. The human expansion into the Orion Reach represents a clear violation of territorial agreements, the Velthary said. Their population grows too fast. Their colonies spread too quickly. If we do not act now, they will consume resources meant for established species. Linda listened without expression. She had heard these words before, dressed in different language. Too young, too aggressive, too ambitious. The Assembly had been saying such things about humanity since the day Earth's first ship arrived at Thesser Prime 3 centuries ago. The Cathari delegation clicked their agreement. The insectoid species controlled most of the mining operations in the Western Arm, and they feared human competition. The Tassani, tall and willowy beings who communicated through color changes in their skin, lashed their support in shades of blue and gold. We propose additional sanctions, the Velthary continued. Human colony ships will be restricted to approved routes. Human population growth will be monitored and limited. Human technological development will require assembly approval before implementation. It was the same story year after year. Every time humanity tried to grow, the Assembly found a new way to cut them back. Every time humans solved a problem for the galaxy, the reward was more restrictions, more oversight, more control. Linda looked at Kevin. He nodded once. The human delegation withdraws its protest, she said. The chamber went quiet. The Velthary's crystalline form flickered with confusion. The Great Assembly speaker, a Dorvani elder, with 7 eyes and skin like ancient stone, leaned forward on its platform. Ambassador Morrison, the speaker said slowly, perhaps you misunderstand. These sanctions will cripple your colonial expansion. Your species will be limited to 17 systems for the next 50 years. I understand perfectly, Linda replied. And I have said what I came to say. She gathered the papers on her desk. Documents that represented 300 years of humanity trying to earn a place among the stars. She placed them in her bag with the careful movements of someone who had practiced this moment many times. Where are you going? The Velthary demanded. Linda paused at the edge of her platform. She looked out at the assembled species, the ancient civilizations that had watched humanity struggle and stumble and grow. She thought about all the times humans had asked for help and received only conditions. All the times they had offered friendship and received only suspicion. Home, she said simply. We are going home. Shh. She walked out of the chamber. Kevin followed without looking back. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden silence until the great doors closed behind them. The assembly erupted into noise. Delegates shouted at each other across the vast space. The speaker called for order again and again, but no one listened. In all the long history of the Galactic Assembly, no species had ever simply walked away. They would come back, the delegates assured each other. Humanity was young and emotional. They would realize their mistake and return, humble and ready to accept the Assembly's guidance. They had no choice. The galaxy was too big to navigate alone, but weeks passed, and the human delegation did not return. Months passed, and something strange began to happen across. Assembly space. Human engineers resigned from their positions at galactic shipyards. Human doctors left the medical centers where they had pioneered treatments for diseases that had plagued other species for millennia. Human teachers walked away from the schools where they had taught the children of a dozen worlds. Human scientists closed their laboratories and disappeared. They did not protest. They did not explain. They simply left. On the colony world of New Geneva, 300,000 humans boarded transport ships in a single day. Cameras captured the scene, broadcasted across the galaxy. Families carrying what they could, children holding their parents' hands. Elderly humans helped aboard by younger ones. All of them moving with quiet purpose toward ships that would take them beyond assembly borders. A Tessany journalist tried to interview one of the departing humans. A young woman named Grace, holding a baby in her arms. "Where will you go?" the journalist asked, colors shifting through concern and curiosity. "Away," Grace said. She did not elaborate. She did not need to. The evacuation took 3 years. When it was complete, every human colony in assembly space stood empty. Buildings remained, full of furniture and personal belongings. Power systems still hummed. Gardens still grew. But the people were gone, and no one knew where they had gone to. Assembly investigators traced the departing ships to the edge of human territory and lost them. The ships had not traveled to any known system. They had simply vanished into the black dot coordinator Threnvax. The oldest Dorvani, still serving the assembly, authorized an expedition to Earth itself. What the expedition found shocked even him. Earth was empty. The great cities stood silent, their streets clean and their buildings intact. The ocean still rolled against the shores. The mountains still reached toward the sky. But 8 billion humans had disappeared, leaving behind a world that looked like it was simply waiting for someone to come home. The expedition found only one sign of human intention. A beacon orbited Earth's moon, transmitting a message on repeat. Linda Morrison's voice spoke from the beacon. To the Galactic Assembly. Humanity thanks you for 3 centuries of education. You taught us well. You taught us that we would never be equals in your eyes. You taught us that no matter how much we contributed, we would always be the young species to be controlled. So we have chosen a different path. Do not look for us. We go where you cannot follow. We wish you well." The message ended. The beacon continued its orbit, patient and eternal. The assembly debated what to do. Some wanted to search for the missing humans. Others argued that good riddance had been achieved. Most simply returned to their business. Confident that humanity's departure was temporary, they were wrong, and they would learn the cost of that mistake. But for now, the galaxy turned, as it always had, and the empty human worlds gathered dust in the dark between stars, 5 years after humanity vanished. The Cathari mining station on Vega 7 experienced its first major failure. The drilling equipment had been running smoothly for decades. Human engineers had designed the machines to work in conditions no other species could manage, boring through rock so hard that standard equipment shattered on contact. The Cathari had never understood exactly how the technology worked, but they had never needed to. The humans had always been there to maintain it. Now the machines sat silent, and no one could make them run again. Station Chief Crixtal stood in the control room. Watching his technicians argue over readouts they could not interpret, the drilling operation supplied raw materials to 37 worlds. Without it, construction projects across 2 sectors would grind to a halt. "Contact the human engineering firm," Crixtal ordered. "The one that built these machines." His assistant made clicking sounds of distress. "We have tried, Station Chief. Their offices are closed. Their communication channels are dead. There is no one to contact." Crixtal stared at the broken machines and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Fear across the galaxy. Similar scenes played out in the months and years that followed. The Velthri communication network began to fail. Human technicians had installed quantum entanglement relays that allowed instant communication across thousands of light years. The technology was beyond anything the Velthri could produce on their own. And without human maintenance, the relays degraded one by one. Messages that once traveled instantly now took days, then weeks. Then some sectors went dark entirely, cut off from the rest of the galaxy by the simple absence of the humans who had connected them, the Tessani. Medical centers faced a different crisis. Human doctors had developed treatments for diseases that had killed Tasani for generations. The treatments required precise calibration that only humans seemed to understand. Without them, the old diseases returned, and the Tasani death rates began to climb. The Dorvani, ancient and patient, watched all of this with growing concern. Their species had lived for 12,000 years by observing, by waiting, by letting younger races make their mistakes. But this was different. This was not a mistake that could be fixed with time. Coordinator Threnvax called an emergency session of the assembly. His stone-like skin had grown thin with age, and his 7 eyes were clouded, but his mind remained sharp. "We face a crisis," he said to the gathered delegates. "Human technology is woven into every part of our civilization. Their engineers built systems we cannot maintain. Their scientists solved problems we cannot understand. Their doctors created cures we cannot replicate. We drove them away, and now we pay the price." The Vel-3 representative shimmered with anger. They left by choice. "Whatever problems we face are their doing, not ours." "They left because we gave them no reason to stay," Threnvax replied. "For 3 centuries, we treated them as children. We limited their growth. We controlled their expansion. We took their contributions and gave them nothing but restrictions in return. Can we truly be surprised that they finally walked away?" The chamber fell silent. No one wanted to admit that the old Dorvani was right. "What do you suggest?" the Cathari delegate asked. "We must find them," Threnvax said. "We must ask them to return." The assembly authorized a search mission. 12 ships from 12 species, the finest vessels the galaxy could produce, launched into the darkness beyond human space. They carried diplomats and scientists and gifts. Everything the assembly could was offer to convince humanity to come home. The ships followed the trail left by human evacuation vessels. The trail led to the edge of the galaxy, where stars grew thin and the void between galaxies began. And there, at the very edge of everything the assembly knew, the trail ended. Captain Yeldros of the Tessini vessel Wandering Light sent his final report before turning back. "They went into the void," he said, his skin cycling through colors of disbelief and awe. "The humans crossed the intergalactic space. They are heading toward Andromeda." The assembly received this news with confusion. The void between galaxies was death. The distances were too vast, the radiation too intense. No technology known to any assembly species could survive such a journey. Humanity had chosen extinction over life under assembly rule. That was the only explanation that made sense. Coordinator Threnvax ordered the search ships to follow as far as they could. One by one, they fell silent. Engines failed in the endless dark. Radiation shields collapsed. Life support systems broke down. Of the 12 ships that launched, only 4 returned. Their crews spoke of horrors that would haunt them forever. The assembly declared humanity extinct. A memorial was built on Thesser Prime, a towering crystal structure that caught the light of 1,000 suns. The inscription read, "To humanity, who burned bright and brief among the stars. May their courage be remembered." Duh! But not everyone believed the official story. A young Dorvani scientist named Velkara spent years studying the human departure. She analyzed every piece of data, every signal, every scrap of evidence left behind, and she reached a conclusion that terrified her. They did not die, she told Coordinator Threnvax in a private meeting. The humans planned this for decades. They developed technology we never saw. They built ships capable of crossing the void. They knew exactly what they were doing when they left. Threnvax listened with his ancient eyes closed. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "If you are right," he said finally, "then we have made an enemy of the only species capable of true innovation. We have pushed away the one race that could have led us into the future. What do we do?" Belkara asked. "We wait," Threnvax said. "We hope that humanity remembers kindness as well as cruelty. And we pray to whatever gods we believe in that when they return, they are willing to forgive." Velkara wanted to ask more questions. But the old coordinator had already turned away, his stone skin gray with age and worry. She left his chambers with a sense of dread that would not fade for many years. The galaxy continued to crumble. Systems failed. Worlds went dark. And somewhere in the vast emptiness between galaxies, humanity traveled toward a future the Assembly could not imagine. 20 years after humanity disappeared into the void, the galaxy was breaking apart. The failures that had started small now spread like disease across every sector. Power grids collapsed on worlds that had known only light for thousands of years. Communication networks fell silent, leaving planets isolated and afraid. Medical systems failed. Plagues that humans had cured returned with terrible hunger. The Assembly met in emergency session after emergency session. There was little they could do. The technology that held their civilization together had been built on human foundations, and those foundations were crumbling on the agricultural world of Tesserae Prime. The automated farming system stopped working. These machines had been designed by human engineers to feed a population of 4 billion. Without them, crops rotted in the fields while people starved in the cities. Governor Malvin watched the food riots from his office window. His skin changed colors rapidly, cycling through fear and despair and anger. 3 centuries of human innovation had made his world prosperous. 20 years without them had brought it to the edge of collapse. How did we let this happen? He asked his assistant. We took them for granted, came the quiet reply. We all did. The Cathari suffered worse. Their entire civilization was built on mining and manufacturing, and human technology ran through it like blood through a body. When the last human-designed reactor failed, their homeworld went dark for the first time in recorded history. Billions of Cathari sat in the darkness, clicking their distress into the void, waiting for help that would not come. Coordinator Threnvax died in his sleep during the 15th year of the crisis. He had lived longer than any Dorvani in memory, but even his ancient strength could not hold out forever. His final words were recorded and shared across the Assembly. We were fools, he had said. We had the greatest gift the universe could offer. Species that solve problems we could not solve, that dream dreams we could not dream. And we treated them like children to be managed. My greatest regret is that I will not live to apologize to them. His successor, a younger Dorvani named Threndel, faced a galaxy on the edge of chaos. She called the Assembly together and spoke words that no coordinator had ever spoken before. We must admit our failure, she said. We must acknowledge that humanity was never the threat we believed them to be. They were our greatest allies, and we drove them away through fear and pride. Whatever comes next, we must face it with honesty. The Assembly responded with silence. Pride was hard to swallow, especially for species that had measured their worth in millennia. But the crisis forced change whether pride allowed it or not, the Veltheri. Once humanity's harshest critics began studying human records with desperate intensity. They found libraries full of knowledge that humans had tried to share, knowledge that the Assembly had rejected or ignored, medical breakthroughs, engineering solutions, scientific discoveries that could have transformed galactic civilization. They offered us everything, a Veltheri researcher named Kristen reported. Everything they learned, they tried to teach us. We refused to listen because we thought we knew better. We thought that a species so young could not possibly have anything to offer a species so old. The irony was bitter. Humanity's youth had been their greatest strength. They were not bound by tradition or custom. They saw problems with fresh eyes and found solutions that older species could never imagine. The Assembly had feared this creativity when they should have embraced it. Christhan dedicated her life to recovering human knowledge. She built a research center on what had once been a human colony world, surrounding herself with human artifacts and records. She learned to read human languages, to understand human thinking, to see the universe the way humans saw it. They were remarkable, she told anyone who would listen. Not because they were powerful, but because they never stopped trying. Every problem was a puzzle to be solved. Every obstacle was a challenge to be overcome. They did not accept limits the way we do. Her research helped slow the decline. Human knowledge, properly understood, allowed the Assembly to repair some of what had been lost. But it was not enough. The damage was too deep, the failures too widespread, and then, 30 years after humanity's departure, something changed. A signal arrived from the direction of Andromeda. It was faint, barely detectable, but but it carried information that made the best minds in the galaxy weep with disbelief. The signal contained star charts, maps of systems no assembly telescope had ever seen, descriptions of worlds circling stars in the Andromeda galaxy. 2.5 million light-years away, humanity had survived. Not only survived, but thrived. They had crossed the impossible void between galaxies and built new homes among foreign stars. More signals followed. Each one carried gifts of knowledge. Cures for diseases that had plagued the assembly for millennia. Energy solutions that made current technology look primitive. Agricultural techniques that could feed entire worlds with minimal resources. The humans were sharing their discoveries freely, asking nothing in return. Christhan wept when she decoded the first medical transmission. It contained a cure for the plague that had killed her daughter years before. The humans had solved the problem decades ago, during their journey across the void. They had kept working, kept learning, kept growing, even as they traveled through the darkest emptiness the universe contained. She asked in a message she broadcast toward Andromeda, knowing it would take millions of years to arrive. Why do you help us after everything we did? She never received an answer, but she suspected she already knew. Humanity helped because that was who they were. They solved problems. They healed wounds. They built bridges instead of walls. The assembly had tried to limit this nature, to control it, to keep it small and manageable. They had failed, and humanity had simply found a larger canvas for their creativity. Now the galaxy received gifts from across the void, each one a reminder of what had been lost and what might yet be reclaimed. The question was whether the assembly was wise enough to learn from its mistakes. Only time would tell. 50 years after the Exodus, signals from Andromeda had become a constant presence in galactic life. Every month brought new transmissions, new gifts of knowledge that transformed assembly civilization in ways that would have seemed impossible a generation ago. The Cathari mining operations ran again. Powered by energy systems based on human designs, the Tasani medical centers cured diseases that had once been death sentences. The Velthari communication networks connected the galaxy more efficiently than ever before. All of it came from humanity, transmitted across 2.5 million light-years of empty space. But the gifts came with an unspoken message that no one could ignore. Each transmission was dated. Each piece of technology was labeled with the year of its development, and the dates told a story that filled the assembly with awe and fear. The technology they received was old. The cures, the engines, the power systems. All of it had been developed decades ago, during humanity's journey through the void. What they were sharing now was history, discarded innovations from a civilization that had moved far beyond them. Now the leading expert on human technology presented her findings to the assembly with a heavy heart. "They are so far ahead of us," she said. "These gifts, miraculous as they seem, are nothing to them. They are giving us their past while keeping their present hidden. I estimate that current human technology is at least 100 years more advanced than what we are receiving. Why hold back?" asked the Cathari delegate. "If they wish to help us, why not share everything?" Christan's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. "I believe they are testing us. They want to see what we do with what they give us. Whether we learn, whether we grow, whether we become worthy of more." The assembly debated this possibility for months. Some argued that humanity was playing games with them, dangling knowledge like treats before hungry animals. Others believed the humans were genuinely trying to help, but feared overwhelming a civilization that had proven itself hostile in the past. Few suggested that humanity simply no longer cared about the assembly at all, that these transmissions were automatic, sent without thought or intention, like messages in bottles cast into an ocean no one expected to cross. Whatever the truth, the signals continued. The transmissions began to include more than just technology. Stories arrived, tales of human adventures in the Andromeda galaxy, records of first contacts with species the assembly had never encountered, descriptions of worlds so strange and beautiful that even the ancient Dorvani wept to read them. Humanity had not merely survived the crossing. they had flourished. They had built civilizations around hundreds of stars. They had made friends among alien species. They had created art and music and literature that spoke to the deepest parts of the soul, and they had done it all alone. Without the assembly's help, without anyone's permission, a young Tisani named Velsar grew up listening to human stories. She learned to read human languages and spent her youth studying their history. The more she learned, the more she understood what the assembly had lost. They never stopped being who they were, she wrote in a journal that would later become famous. We tried to change them, to make them fit into our understanding of how species should behave, but they refused to change. They simply left and became more themselves than ever. We punished them for their nature, and they responded by proving that their nature was exactly what the universe needed. Velsar dedicated her life to building bridges. She organized expeditions to the edge of the galaxy, not to search for humans, but to send messages toward Andromeda. She broadcast greetings, apologies, questions, and hopes into the void, knowing that millions of years would pass before they arrived. Perhaps they will never receive our words, she told her followers. Perhaps the universe is too vast for conversation across such distances. But we must try. We must show them that we have learned, that we have changed, that we are ready to be the partners they once wanted us to be. The assembly watched these efforts with mixed feelings. Some supported Velsar's mission. Others dismissed it as foolish sentiment. A few actively opposed it, arguing that humanity had abandoned the galaxy and deserved to be forgotten. But the signals kept coming, and the gifts kept arriving, and slowly, year by year, the assembly began to change. New laws were passed protecting innovation. New institutions were created to foster creativity. The old restrictions that had bound species like humanity were lifted, and younger races were encouraged to dream big and reach far. It was not enough to undo the past, but it was a start. 70 years after the Exodus, a new signal arrived. This one was different from all the others. It came not from Andromeda, but from somewhere much closer. Somewhere on the edge of the galaxy itself. The message was simple. We are coming home. Panic spread through the assembly. Humanity was returning. The species they had wronged, the civilization they had driven away, the people they had treated as children for 300 years were coming back. Would they come as friends? As conquerors? As judges ready to deliver sentence for crimes committed long ago? No one knew. No one could know. All they could do was wait and watch the darkness between stars, hoping that when humanity finally emerged, they would find it in their hearts to forgive. The waiting was harder than anyone expected. Months passed with no further signals. The galaxy held its breath, caught between hope and fear, watching for ships that might bring salvation or destruction. Kristan, old now but still sharp, spent her final days preparing. She gathered everything she had learned about humanity. Every piece of knowledge, every insight, every guess about who they had become during their journey across the void. They will judge us, she told her students before she died. Not with weapons or threats, but with their presence. They will stand before us as proof of what we rejected, what we feared, what we tried to destroy, and we will have to face the truth of what we did. She was right, of course. She usually was. The return was coming. The only question was what it would mean for a galaxy that had spent a century learning to regret its greatest mistake. 100 years after the Exodus, humanity came home. The ships appeared without warning on a morning that would be remembered for as long as the galaxy existed. They emerged from fold space simultaneously, thousands of vessels materializing across every sector at the exact same moment. The coordination alone was impossible by any technology the assembly understood. The ships were beautiful. They were terrible. They were designs that made the most advanced assembly vessels look like toys built by children. Their hulls shimmered with energies that sensors could not identify. Their engines produced no exhaust, no radiation, no trace of the forces that moved them. They simply existed, hanging in the darkness like stars that had decided to visit. On Tessari Prime, population gathered in the streets to watch 3 human ships take position above their capital city. On the Cathari homeworld, thousands of vessels formed a ring around the planet, blocking out the stars. On Nesser Prime itself, a single massive ship descended through the clouds and came to rest beside the memorial that had been built to honor humanity's supposed extinction. The galaxy held its breath. Ambassador Samuel Price was the first human to set foot on assembly territory in a century. He walked down a ramp of light from his ship, flanked by guards in armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal. He was tall, with gray eyes that caught the sunlight and seemed to hold it, examining it before letting it go. He was the great-great-grandson of Linda Morrison, the woman who had walked out of the assembly chamber 100 years ago. He carried her strength in his spine and her patience in his heart. He had been chosen for this moment because he understood better than anyone what it meant. Coordinator Threneval, the current leader of the assembly, met him at the base of the memorial. She was young for a Dorvani, barely 3,000 years old, but she carried the weight of her species' guilt on her stone shoulders. "Welcome home," she said, and her voice broke on the words. Samuel looked at the memorial. He read the inscription about humanity burning bright and brief. He touched the crystal surface with one hand, feeling the smoothness of it, the care that had gone into its construction. "You thought we were dead," he said. "It was not a question. We hoped you were not," Threneval replied. "But we feared the worst." Samuel nodded slowly. "The void between galaxies is not kind to travelers. Many of our ships did not survive the crossing. Many of our people died in the darkness, far from any sun. But enough of us made it. Enough to build again. Enough to grow." "Now you have returned," Threneval said. "To judge us? To punish us?" Samuel turned to face her. His gray eyes met her 7 ancient ones, and something passed between them that words could not capture. "We have not come for judgment," he said. "We left that behind long ago, along with our anger and our grief. The galaxy you wronged is not the galaxy that stands before you now. We have grown beyond such things." The assembly representatives who had gathered to witness this moment shifted uncertainly. This was not what they had expected. They had prepared for demands, for accusations, for the settling of old scores. They had not prepared for forgiveness. Samuel walked past the memorial and into the great chamber where his ancestor had once stood. The delegates parted before him, unable to meet his eyes. He took his place at the platform that had been empty for a century, and he waited for silence. When it came, he spoke. 100 years ago, humanity left this galaxy because we were given no choice. You feared our growth. You limited our potential. You treated us as children who needed guidance when we only wanted to be partners. We tried to earn your respect, and you responded with restrictions. We tried to share our gifts, and you responded with suspicion. So we left." He paused, letting the words settle. "We crossed the void between galaxies. We lost friends and family in the darkness. We arrived in Andromeda with nothing but our ships and our determination. And there, among stars you have never seen, we built civilizations that would have been impossible under your rule." The delegates listened in shame. Some wept. Others simply stared at the floor, unable to face the truth of what they had done. "We sent you our knowledge," Samuel continued. "We shared our discoveries. Not because we owed you anything, but because that is who we are. We solve problems. We build bridges. We help those who need help, even those who once hurt us. That is the nature you tried to change, and it is the nature that saved us in the void." He smiled then, a sad and gentle expression that transformed his face. "We have not come to rule you. We have not come to punish you. We have come to offer you a choice." He raised his hand, and the chamber filled with light. Images appeared in the air above every platform. Star systems in Andromeda, worlds circling foreign suns, species that the assembly had never encountered, living alongside humans in civilizations that spanned galaxies. "The universe is vast," Samuel said. "This galaxy, for all its wonders, is only one small corner of existence. We have opened doors to places you cannot imagine. We have built bridges across the void itself. Any species willing to walk through those doors, any civilization ready to join us among the stars is welcome. And if we refuse," asked the Velthari delegate, voice trembling, Samuel's smile faded slightly. Then you may remain here. You may govern your worlds and have your disputes and live as you have always lived. We will not stop you. But know this, the universe moves forward whether you move with it or not. 100 years ago, you tried to keep us small. Now we offer you the chance to grow with us. The choice is yours. He stepped down from the platform and walked toward the doors. His guards fell into step behind him. The assembly watched in silence as humanity's representative left the chamber, just as his ancestor had done a century before. But this time he paused at the doors. He turned back and spoke one final time. "We never forgot you," he said. "Even in the darkest parts of the void, we remembered the galaxy where we were born. We remembered the species who taught us, even through cruelty, what we were capable of becoming. We hold no hatred for you, only hope. We hope you have learned. We hope you are ready. Because the stars are waiting, and we would rather not explore them alone." The doors closed behind him. In the silence that followed, the delegates looked at each other. They had spent a century regretting their treatment of humanity. They had rebuilt their civilization with human gifts. They had learned, slowly and painfully, that the young species they had tried to control had been their greatest hope all along. Now that hope had returned, offering not vengeance, but partnership. Not punishment, but possibility. Not the judgment they deserved, but the future they had almost destroyed. One by one, the delegates voted. The decision was unanimous. The galaxy would follow humanity into the darkness between stars. They would walk through the doors that humans had opened. They would become, at last, the partners they should have been from the beginning, and somewhere across the void. In civilizations built around foreign stars, humanity welcomed them home. The students had finally become teachers, and the teachers had finally learned to listen.